Welcome into the Invest Well Show. I'm your host, Michael Wall. Hey, listen, we got a special guest that's joining us today, Dave Walker. He was a former U.S. Comptroller for the federal government. He's done a lot of work in relation to fiscal policy and research and how to balance the budget. This is a guy that kind of knows a thing or two about fiscal responsibility, has some of the greatest access and insight to fiscal policy of probably anyone that I've met in the country. And Dave, first off, I just want to say thanks for joining us on the show today.
Michael, it's good to be with you. And let me clarify for people, what the Comptroller General is. In English, it's the Auditor General, the Chief Accountability Officer of the United States, and the CEO of something called the Government Accountability Office. And God knows we need more accountability.
You got that right. And, one of the things that I was intrigued by, full disclosure, we work with David on some other sides on the financial side, but when we were having conversation, you had mentioned to me, David, about the idea that one of the reasons you left is that you are not really able to implement some policy to promote and create changes. And so we wanted to talk today on this show a little bit about a few things that are happening in the world today. Obviously, Israel is on everybody's mind. The Speaker of the House being ousted is on everybody's mind. Continuing resolution and what does that look like? And so why don't we start first, maybe initially, with this idea of Israel, because you wrote a book a little while back, America 2040, Still a Superpower. And it's interesting how that book is kind of coming to fruition in a lot of ways with some of the things that we're seeing globally. You want to take a minute and talk about that?
Sure, Michael. I wrote a book entitled America in 2040, Still a Superpower, ? Because it's a question. The answer is yes, if we do certain things, and no, if we don't do certain things, and they're all outlined in the book. But basically what I talked about is it takes four things to be a superpower today: global economic power, global diplomatic influence, global military capability, and global cultural influence. And we're the only country until recently that met all four of those criteria. The Soviet Union never met it. Russia doesn't meet it. But China does now, and they're emerging. And quite frankly, we're in decline, in part because we can't put our finances in order. We don't have a plan. We don't have a priority straight. And in the book, I talked about an alliance against U.S. interests in all four dimensions, led by China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And those things are manifesting themselves right now. What's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Gaza and in Israel, what potentially could happen with regard to Taiwan. And so we need to recognize reality and start making some changes in order to be able to address some large known and growing challenges that threaten our collective future.
Yeah, and I can't agree more. One of the things, Dave, we see a lot, and I believe it's used as a little bit of a political wedge from time to time. It's talking about the debt ceiling. Hey, should we raise the ceiling? Should we not? What's going to happen? Are we going to shut down the government? We hear all these conversations. What are your thoughts on that as far as, kind of getting that in order and then really fiscal policy for this country? If we had to say and lay out a 3-step plan, and it's probably bigger than that and greater than that, but 3-step plan for fiscal policy, because, it's the old story of when you take care of your own house, you're then able to help others well. And so what does that look like for you as far as fiscal policy, the debt ceiling, and people using it kind of as a manipulative tool?
Well, I testified before the House Budget Committee back this spring, and I gave them a 3-step plan in order to be able to restore fiscal sanity and sustainability. Step 1, you need to cut current spending as compared to the baseline. If you look at 2019, which was the year before COVID, and 2023, which is only 4 years later, federal spending has gone up post-COVID. 2023 is post-COVID, 40%. 40% in 4 years, whereas inflation has been less than half of that. By the way, there's a connection. The excess spending created loose monetary policy, which stoked additional inflation, so they're interrelated. So the first thing is to cut the baseline of spending. The second thing is to create a statutory fiscal sustainability commission comprised of capable, credible, and non-conflicted individuals who would engage the American people with the facts, the truth, the tough choices, solicit input, make a package of recommendations that deals with social insurance reforms, spending reprioritization and reduction, and revenue and tax reforms that would be guaranteed an up or down vote. And then the third one is the debt ceiling is a bad joke. It hasn't done anything to constrain the growth of government or mounting debt burdens. We're the only major country that has that approach. We need to repeal the debt limit and replace it with a constitutional fiscal responsibility limit that limits how much debt as a percentage of the economy we can take on, absent extraordinary and limited circumstances. Those three things will stabilize us, put us on a sustainable path. It will help our economic growth, our individual opportunity. It will end up helping us with inflation. It will help us maintain our superpower status in 2040 and beyond.
So you're in a place, Dave, where you have a unique aspect and really focus here, because unlike many folks that are either outside the aisle or even inside the aisle, you were part of the fiscal responsibility and you saw the details of the numbers in the country for years and years and years. What are your thoughts in relation to that three-step plan? Cut spending, statutory fiscal commission, debt ceiling is a joke. We need to do something different. How do we?
That's the only thing that will bind current and future Congresses. Nothing else.
Constitutional amendment.
Right.
Okay, so how do we get that done? What's the fastest way to make this happen for the country?
Well, there's two ways to get a constitutional amendment under Article 5 of the Constitution. The old-fashioned way, which we've used for 27 times, which is 2/3 of the House pass something, 2/3 of the Senate. They then send it to the states. 3/4 of the states have to ratify. But the founders were very bright people. They envisioned that in the future that Congress could become so out of touch and out of control, or that could be certain issues where they had a fundamental conflict of interest, like controlling spending, like term limits, like campaign finance reform, that the states should have equal opportunity to be able to propose amendments. And that if 2/3 of the states, or 34, end up filing an application for a convention of states to propose amendments, not a constitutional convention, a convention of states to propose one or more amendments, then they meet. If half of them can come up with something, they send it back to the states. 3/4 have to ratify. Here's shocking, Michael. In 1979, we had 39 states that had active applications. In 1983, we had 40, and Congress did nothing because they don't want this to happen. And so I'm working with a group that's working with several states that we believe before the end of this year will file suit against the Congress, a declaratory judgment that would ultimately be decided by the Supreme Court that will force the Congress to either act through the normal process or call this convention where the states can do what needs to be done.
So you're saying these amendments have been filed, but Congress has done nothing with them.
The applications have been filed,
right?
But the Congress never assigned anybody to receive the applications, store the applications, and most importantly, count the applications. And as you know, America is not top 25 in the world in math, and I hate to tell you, but Congress is a lot worse.
That's why we see some of those commercials. Or that I saw a lady the other day on an interview. She said, 2 + 2 is 5 if you feel like it is. I'm like, I don't think that's the way that works, but I think that's how Congress might be doing their math from time to time. So that's interesting. So I didn't realize there was that many applications on file over the years. And the group that you're working with, are you talking about no labels there? Because it's a great transition.
I'm working with no labels too. But if you want to know more about this, go to Let Us Vote For the word for FRA.org. Let Us Vote For FRA.org. You can find out all about it.
Okay. Let Us Vote For FRA.org. Check that out. And can people put some pressure and get involved? I mean, is it something where, hey, if we as citizens get involved in financially, put monies there to create greater bandwidth? I don't know. What does that look like as far as how can the citizens get involved to help in this fight?
Well, they can get involved two ways. They can help financially, obviously, but they also can help by contacting their elected representatives, making sure that they're focused on this issue. And if they're not focused on the issue, vote for somebody who is.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Michael, the first three words of the Constitution are the most important, and they need to come alive. And those first three words, as you know, are we the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, everybody's talking today about the House. Not your house, not my house, but the Speaker of the House is in a place where he is, he is permanently on the golf course. So the question is, what does that look like? I mean, we got stuff going on with Israel. There's war there and things like that, and obviously that's something we'll talk about in just a minute and how that connects with things. But what are your thoughts as far as the ousting of the speaker and the disarray? I mean, I think we'd all would agree. The approval ratings of Congress and the Senate have been low for a long time. But what are your thoughts how does this affect where we are currently as a government?
Well, first, I'm very disappointed with regard to what happened. Reasonable people can differ on whether Kevin McCarthy is the right person to be Speaker of the House or not. Long-standing tradition, which is even acknowledged by Nancy Pelosi, is the majority party, no matter what the margin is, should pick the Speaker. I thought, quite frankly, that what would end up happening is that some Democrats would end up voting to table the motion, and therefore McCarthy would stay in as Speaker. But McCarthy went on television the day before the issue came up and basically blamed the Democrats for certain things that I think inflamed them and caused them not to want to table the issue. But now you've got a situation of, all right, what's going to happen? You've got two announced candidates, Jim Jordan, who's very conservative, capable but very conservative, and Steve Scalise, who's the majority leader, the number two person, who has had some health challenges but is dealing with those now. And you've also had some comments by McCarthy about, that would lead you to believe that he might be interested in throwing his hat back in the ring. Bottom line is, I hope that we get this resolved this week. The Republicans met last night. They're meeting again today. They say that they're going to have a vote tomorrow, but I don't think they're going to want to have a vote unless they know that somebody can prevail. And, we'll just have to wait and see. We need to get this resolved. It's not just with regard to what's going on in Israel. It's not just what's going on with regard to Ukraine. It's also the border. It's also the continuing resolution that expires in the middle of November. We need stability. The people need stability. The markets need stability. And hopefully we'll get that done sooner rather than later.
So let me ask you this question, Dave. For those that are not really familiar with the governmental structure and how it works, and they think about the speaker, right? It's pretty much all they're hearing is from a news clip or a report that they're reading in a paper or something like that. But they really don't know, okay, I've heard the Speaker of the House, Nancy was for a little while. Like, what does the Speaker of the House do? Because you got all these people in Congress and all these people in Senate. Obviously, we're talking about Congress here, but at the end of the day, what is the benefit of having the Speaker? How much chaos really does it create for them to not be able to do their day-to-day job? From a layman's term, how would you present that to folks that are watching this to say this is why having a speaker is important? Obviously, we need it, but from your perspective, in layman's terms, how would you articulate that?
First, the speaker is the third highest ranking person in the federal government. Number one is the president. Number two is the vice president. Number three is Speaker of the House. So if something happened to the president and the vice president, the Speaker of the House would become president of the United States. Secondly, the speaker controls what happens in the House. The speaker controls who are committee chairs. The speaker controls what bills get considered. The speaker has great influence on whether and to what extent there's going to be debate, how long there's going to be debate, whether or not amendments are going to be offered, and if so, how many through the Rules Committee. So the House basically can't operate without the person who is in charge of the House. And the person who's in charge of the House is the Speaker of the House.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So we got to make sure that that's fixed. All right, let's transition, talk about Israel. Everybody's talking about that recently, all the stuff happening there and the rockets and the war that's kind of ongoing or in the process of. What are your thoughts there as far as how that affects? I mean, there's always been, the Middle East and Israel, there's always been, from biblical times, there's been a desire to overthrow and overtake Israel. This has been going on for a long, long time, God's people, if you will. And what are your thoughts now in 2023, the effect globally, domestically, that this type of action, this type of war is having or will have on where we are fiscally and the world?
Well, as I mentioned before, there's an alliance against U.S. interest, by China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And in many cases, they don't work directly. They work through proxies. and such is the case in the Middle East with Hamas and with Hezbollah. Hamas is Sunni, Hezbollah is Shia, um, Iran is Shia, but the common desire is to eliminate Israel as a nation. You know, my view is that based upon what's happened in the last few days, the answer is fairly simple. You neutralize Hamas and you penalize Iran. There's absolutely no question that Iran is behind this. And then if Hezbollah gets involved from Lebanon, they're on the north side of Israel, okay, then you have to do the same with Hezbollah. We don't want to commit U.S. troops to this, just like we're not committing U.S. troops. I'm talking about on the ground, boots on the ground. They're probably going to have to fight urban warfare, which is the worst kind of warfare to fight, okay?
Yeah.
For Americans, you might think back of what happened in Fallujah in Iraq and all the casualties that were taken there. It's absolutely the worst thing to do. But there are things that we can and should do to support them with regard to weapons, with regard to intelligence. We've now moved, a carrier task force off the coast. That's got huge capabilities if we decide we want to use any of it. But let's just hope that this doesn't spread further. Let's hope that we don't get into a shooting match with Iran, because that would not be pretty. And obviously, the instability is going to have an impact on the markets. It's also going to have an impact on oil prices.
Yeah.
It ain't going to be good.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, which is one of the reasons in our other companies we are involved in that, by the way. So we like, hey,
I've got some positions in energy companies and oil, yeah.
Yeah, we got some more when you talk to our team later, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, I think that's a great point as far as a little bit of transition for those that are out there that have wealth and that are investing and things like that to be thinking about, in any economic cycle or any economic condition or situation globally, there's always opportunity. And I think that's why it's so important to really be intentional about what you're investing in, how you're investing in it, and really be proactive in the process. Dave, let me ask you this, kind of landing the plane a little bit, kind of, sort of, and I want to end on a positive note because there are some good things out there and good things happening in our world today, even though we're facing all of these challenges. What are your thoughts? I have a friend that's gone down and done some cleanup on the border directly. They, tons and tons of trash that they've picked up working with local sheriffs and police departments. Done just a great work there. John Rourke is his name, if you've seen him around, Blue Line Moving. But what are your thoughts about the fiscal strain from our country, being in a situation where with all of these illegals coming in the way that they are, nobody's saying don't come in legally. We're just saying let's vet them and make sure that they come in correctly. What are your thoughts on the fiscal strain of this country in local areas? We're seeing some of the conversation of New York. Hey, go somewhere else now, even before they were, hey, come on in. Now they're saying go away. What are your thoughts of the strain financially on our country as far as the effect that this is going to have for some time?
Well, several things. First, what's going on at the border is totally outrageous and unacceptable. I think, quite frankly, it's an impeachable offense on behalf of the president that he is not enforcing the current law. He is not protecting the border, but that's a different story. So I think that what we need to do is that we need to seal the border. I'm all for legal immigration. That's one of the things that made this country great. You are too. Most Americans are. But there's a difference between legal and illegal. You talk about one issue, which is the fiscal implication. This is not just a challenge for the federal government and the money that the federal government has to undertake. It's a challenge for state and local governments. You have cities like New York who say they're a sanctuary city and they'll welcome anybody. Then all of a sudden, when something like this happens, well, not so fast. I'm not so sure that's a good idea. And they want more money.
Yeah.
The bottom line is you got to deal with the disease. The disease is you've got to have border security. And secondly, we need comprehensive immigration reform that does several things. One, provides more temporary work permits, especially for things like agriculture and needs that we have in the summertime with regard to landscaping and everything else. Secondly, provides more green cards, all right? Provides a pathway to citizenship for those who deserve it and to come through the legal routes, if you will, all right, provides a pathway to legal status, but legal status doesn't mean that you can vote.
Right.
That's one of the reasons allowing these people in is they're wanting to be able to increase the number of voters that might support them, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So there are several things that we need to do, but that's not going to happen until you secure the border. We also need to be able to provide citizenship for the DACA children. I mean, the children who came in, they weren't the ones that broke the law. Their parents broke the law. We also, I think, lastly, need to think about birthright citizenship. Right now, in the United States, if you're born in the United States, then you're automatically a citizen of the United States. Well, there's a lot of people that are coming in here that are impregnated, right? And they want to have a child here. The child is automatically a citizen of the United States, and then they want to stay to make themselves, citizens, if you will. I mean, I think, given the changes that have happened since the Constitution was done, maybe it makes sense to say at least one of the parents ought to be a citizen.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of common sense things that you can do, but until we secure the border, they're not going to get done.
Yeah. And Dave.
By the way, Biden now says he's going to try to do something on the wall. I'm a personal friend with a guy who has bought a lot of the material that was purchased to build the wall at pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
Pennies on the dollar, okay? And now they're saying they want to build some of the wall, and we just sold it for pennies on the dollar, so we're going to have to buy it back at full price. I mean, this is just total incompetence manifest.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways it's high-end money laundering. I mean, it's like the idea of depleting the oil reserves for the purposes of what? Right? To weaken our country in a time of need, to be in a place where we have to buy more from another country, be more dependent. Independence is the heartblood of this country.
The purpose was very simple, to hold oil prices down for political reasons, okay? But now we're going to have to buy it back at higher prices. But let's talk about one other thing about the border.
Yeah.
We should designate the cartels as terrorist organizations.
Uh-huh.
We should tell Mexico, if you don't deal with it, we're going to deal with it. And just like Israel needs to take Hamas out,
yeah,
we need to take out the cartels.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that would be okay. So that would be in the lane. Everything that you just said there, Dave, would be in the lane of common sense.
Well, that's where you come to no labels. That's where you come to no labels.
Exactly. And that's why we're going to talk about that in just a second. But, I love this quote. Remember the old quote, there's nothing more uncommon than common sense. Yeah. And so we're in a place where there is some positive, there is some good things happening. And I want to challenge those of you that are watching this out there, because I'll tell you, if you're in a place where you're watching negative news all the time, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with Dave. Not only is he a good friend, we've been able to service him and his family in different ways with other companies, but he's got great insight. He's got great wisdom. He's right there on the front lines. He's sharing things and talking about things that, if implemented, make sense. And I think that's the beauty of the process, especially is what you're doing when you go down the idea of no labels. It almost reminds me, before we jump there, Dave, it reminds me of Notre Dame and Penn State. And, one of the things, I'm a Pennsylvania boy at heart, right? So I was a whiteout guy, Penn State, all this stuff. One of the things that I love, and of course, Lou Holtz was a great coach too. But one of the things that I love about those teams is it was not about individuality. It was about the team. It was about working for the team. And it was so much so that they said, hey, we're not going to put your name on the jersey. Now, there's anything wrong with putting your name on the jersey, but it just gives you a different mindset when you're thinking about the fact that I'm going to show up for the team. And with no labels, one of the things that I love is, in a lot of ways, when you look at a lot of these super PACs or some of these other organizations that are kind of funneling people down the path, whether it's the R or the D, Republican, Democrat, they're funneling people down the path, Dave, of this is who we want next because we believe this is the most controllable person because we've done this and this and this and this for this person along the way. And with no labels, they're saying, hey, let's eliminate some of that and let's actually find people that are good for the job. Just like if you were going to go and get a surgery and you were going to get a surgery on your brain because you had a brain tumor, you wouldn't be like, you know what? Give me the doctor that is the most highly funded by organizations, but isn't necessarily the best at what they do. You would want the best person at the job. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about No Labels because I know you're passionate about this. You've been involved in kind of promoting this and pushing this and actively being involved in distributing this conversation. Talk about why this is so important at this time right now in our country, Dave. As divided as we are, there's still reasons for solution.
Right. No Labels was formed in 2010, and I'm one of the national co-founders of No Labels. It was formed to be able to promote bipartisan solutions to large, known, and growing problems, to break the gridlock, if you will. And you know, its philosophy is not left, not right, forward. Progress, not partisanship. Results.
Wait, I want you to stop real quick. You said not left, not right. You said it so fast because you know it, but it's
forward.
Yeah, not left, not right. Did you hear that, folks? Not left, not right, forward. Go ahead.
Correct. And No Labels is the driving force behind creation of something called the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House, which is a formal caucus, 64 members, 32 Democrats, 32 Republicans, who have actively worked together to get things done and break the gridlock on things like the debt ceiling, on the CR, on the infrastructure bill, on the CHIPS Act, on various things. They also supported the formation of something called the bicameral group, which are bipartisan senators and House leaders working together to try to get things done. But the newest thing for No Labels is they see an unprecedented situation where a supermajority of Americans don't want Biden, a supermajority of Americans don't want Trump. A record percentage of Americans believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. A record percentage of Americans believe that the future for our kids and grandkids may not be as good as it has been for us. A record percentage of people are now deemed to be political independents or unaffiliated, like myself. In fact, the latest numbers that I've seen, 48% unaffiliated, 27% Democrat, 25% Republican. So independents are close to overtaking Democrats and Republicans combined. And yet when we see things, people talk about bipartisan solutions. They don't talk about nonpartisan solutions because what we have now is, you know, a supermajority of the American people are in what I call the sensible center. Center right, center left. I'm center right, okay? That's where you get things done, all right? But a disproportionate amount of the people who represent us in Washington are wingnuts. They're far right, far left. The margins are very close. They don't want to compromise. Compromise is not a bad word, okay?
Right.
You need to have principles and values that you stick with, but you can't always get 100% of what you want. And when you have large, known, and growing problems, doing nothing is bad. And so that's what it's all about. If you want to find out more about it, it's nolabels.org. And last thing, if and only if there is an opportunity for a third unity ticket option to win in 2024 in the Electoral College, then they will run a third option. We are getting ballot access in all 50 states to be able to provide that as an option. It will only be provided if there's a pathway to victory in the Electoral College. There is today. There may or may not be, you know, in April of 2024, which is when the decision will be made.
What do you think of Kennedy? Last question here. What do you think about Kennedy going independent?
I think Kennedy will take more from Biden than Trump if those are the two nominees, but he will take some from both.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because he's more libertarian. He's more libertarian. But you know, the Kennedy name is very powerful, especially in the Democratic community, especially in the African American.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, I love a lot of the things some of the things that he's talking about. Again, it goes back to common sense stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, the bad problem with wingnuts is if one of those ends, Dave, break off, boy, it's really hard to unscrew.
Well, the other it flies off and could do a lot of damage.
Exactly.
You talk about common sense. One of the things that No Labels has done is it's published a common sense booklet. Yes, like Thomas Paine's, all right? Common sense booklet that has 30 issues that are of concern with the American people and a way forward to address those 30 issues. And you can get a copy of that at nolabels.org. And the issue is, we may or may not offer our line to a third unity ticket option. But if we don't, we still have this common sense agenda, which, like the Republicans back in the 90s when they had their Contract for America, and like Ross Perot advocated for when he ran for president, had a major impact on who the next president was and who the next Congress was. And so, that's another thing that we're working on that's very, very worthwhile to check out.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that. And let's end on a positive note here, Dave. So we've talked about a lot of challenges with our country, and there, anytime there's challenges, we can rise above them. You've given us some great solutions, which I love, and I'm thankful. Listen, from me to you, I've known you now a couple years in different ways, personally, professionally, et cetera. And I want you to know, and I've told you this before, I am thankful for your work. I'm thankful for the work of those ahead of us. We'll call it age-wise. So that way those that are continuing on this journey of growth, can be inspired and really empowered with the fact that it doesn't feel hopeless. I'm a tank half full guy. I've never been a pessimistic guy anyways. But at the end of the day, watching folks like you, as you moved into the retirement space, but really not retiring fully because you're using your mind, you're using your gifts and abilities and access and influence to really be in a place where you're saying, I want to do what I call, and really Dennis Waitley called, plant shade trees under which I'll never sit, by being in a place where I'm actively trying to literally make this country better, focusing on our home front. So what's one positive, exciting thing that you would share with the listeners of the show and the podcast as we're leaving here to say, this is something that I am excited about?
Well,
and it could be just your pickleball game. I don't know.
No. But for the record, I'm Roman Catholic, so I'm on the Notre Dame side of Penn State, Notre Dame. I'm also an Alabama fan, and we're pretty good too. So, but
yeah.
Look, here's what it comes down to. We have strayed from the principles and values that made this country great. Limited but effective government, individual liberty and opportunity, personal responsibility and accountability, rule of law and equal justice under the law, fiscal responsibility, intergenerational equity, and the key word, stewardship. Stewardship means you don't just do what's good for today. You don't just leave things better off when you leave than when you came. You leave them better positioned for the future, fiscally, environmentally, etc. We are failing on that, but we can turn it around.
Yeah.
And I will continue to fight, not for me, not really for my kids, because I think they'll be okay for my grandkids. Yes, we can. Yes, we must. And if I have anything to say about it, yes, we will.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Dave, thanks so much for taking a minute and sharing some of your thoughts on the show today. I really enjoyed that.
Good to be with you, Michael.
Yeah. And hey, listen, guys, we're going to make sure that we have nolabels.org, that site on the investwellshow.com. So if you forget, you want to click on the link of the show, or maybe you're listening via podcast and there's a link there, you can go to the homepage of the show. We're going to have the nolabels.org there. So it'll be real easy for you to access and get access to this place.
It'd be good too, Michael, if you can, to put in, let us vote for FRA.org too. It'd be great.
I'll be happy to do that. And Dave, has been not only a great friend, again, professional relationship, but just, I'll tell you what I love about him as well. And I'm not patronizing, but I really want to encourage you out there. That's the goal of this, because there's a lot of you out there with a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and you're not using it. You're spending too much time on the golf course and at the spa and vacationing, and your grandkids are going to pay the price for it. When he's talking about all of these missions and things that he wants to do to change the world and change the world for the better, he's not running for office. He's not running for president. He's not running for Congress. He's not running for Senate. He's not running for governor. He's living in the mire in D.C., and he's literally in a place where he's committed and dedicated to this process because he believes it's right and he believes it's true. And it's belief that's come from our founders that's been continued to be facilitated years and years, and we've seen that at work. And that's one of the reasons that I love what Dave's doing in his process in his life, is the zeal behind what he wants to do. So I want to challenge you to be thinking in your life about what you are doing to get involved with things that actually matter. What does your day-to-day look like? Maybe start out by going to nolabels.org and just saying, how can I get involved maybe financially? How can I start a little local chapter group? How can I get in some of the resources, maybe read some of the things so I can equip myself with the knowledge to help and add value to others? And in relation to your investments, listen, as always, we have some great sponsors of this show, Wall Private Wealth, U.S. Private Wealth, other companies that I own and other hats that I wear. Make sure that you are in a place with your wealth, millions and millions of dollars plus. Make sure that you are in a place where you are strategically making good decisions. Because if you're not, and we have market collapse, and you have not been prepared, you will not be one of the ones that will feel good about or be able to fund financially some of the causes that are going to shift the needs of this country to really move it forward. So listen, be blessed. Have a great one. Share this show with someone that needs to hear it. Maybe they need some encouragement of some real talk of things that are real solutions, not just political rhetoric that you see on a lot of the major networks out there today, but real conversation of real things to move this country forward. Be blessed. And as always, may I encourage you to live on purpose so you can live with purpose. We'll talk to y'all soon.